Hello and welcome back. So this is the last in this series on how to create a walk cycle using a combination of Illustrator and Animate CC. In the last video we'd imported the layers from Illustrator and converted them to keyframes. So in this file, this is the one that we'd left off at. We've got this one symbol on an individual layer. I've added another layer for the background, which we'll get to in a second. If I double click on this symbol, inside we've got the various keyframes that make up the looping walk cycle. And in between each of the keyframes, if you remember, we'd added, by doing F5 a couple of times, some frames so that it slows it down. I'll double click outside of there so that we're back on the main timeline. And then let's select the first keyframe on the background layer, and we'll go to File, Import, Import to Stage. We'll find that Illustrator file that has the walk background and press Open. In this dialog box that pops up, we've got all of the layers and the groups and so on. Let's collapse that so all we see is the layers. Down at the bottom where it says Convert To, if you remember, for the character we'd import it as keyframes, but for this we could either import it as animate layers or a single animate layer. If you wanted to do a multi-plane effect, then you could choose animate layers so that you could separate it out so that the foreground and the background move at different rates. But for right now I'm going to choose single animate layer and click import. Once I've done that, I'm going to lock the layer that has the character on it so I don't disturb that, and then do Command A to select all, and then choose Modify Convert to Symbol. You could choose either movie clip or graphic symbol, and you might choose movie clip, for instance, if you wanted to blur out the background because you can't apply the filters to the graphic symbol. But I'm going to choose graphic symbol so they can see it play when I scrub across the play line. And then I'm going to label this. So let's name this BG for background, just like the layer, and go ahead and press OK. Oh, this one's already taken. We'll have to call it number 2. So now I've got the background inside of a symbol. I can go ahead and add a keyframe right at the end of my frames. So go ahead and do Insert Keyframe by right-clicking. And then in between those two keyframes, if I right-click again, I can go ahead and create a classic tween. At the beginning of this, I'm going to move this back a little bit. And then at the end, I'm going to move it this way. So when we scrub it, if I start at the beginning and scrub it, you can see that the background is now moving behind it. If you remember from the beginning, we'd actually had this have to be in the stage area, but if you wanted to move it afterwards, you could just suddenly double click inside of there, so you're inside of that symbol, select this and kind of move it around. I think it's probably fine where it is. I'll go out of here, and then if I hit Command Return, we can see what we've got. So that's pretty much the end of this tutorial explaining how to create a walk cycle and add a background to give it a sense of movement. You could, by the way, also tween the character so he starts on this side and add a keyframe just like we did for the background. So instead of having the background move, you could have the character move, but I find that when you do that it tends to look a little bit like it's sliding along sometimes. So rather than doing that, we have it look like it's panning, so the camera's following the character along and therefore the background ends up moving. I did make a different version of this just to show you. So this is one where I'd gone into that same tracing and I've gone in and added color, I've traced around for the hair, I've modified the shape of the head, I've added some features, I've colored the character in various ways, and then I've made a colored version of the background just to give you a different perspective. Also in the layers, you'll notice I have several layers now for the background so that it moves at different rates. So the mountains in the background are moving more slowly than the cactuses in the foreground. So if we test this one, I do Command Return, you can see the effect of that. So that's about it. I just wanted to finish up by explaining that we can export this in various ways. You can do Command Return, and by doing that you automatically create an SWF file which you could use to upload to a website. We've also done, you could also do, I should say, export, and you could choose various export options. So I'm not going to go into details right now, but you could export it as a video, which gives you various options for types of video, or you could export it as a movie. So if you did export as a movie, you have these various options here, SWF, JPEG, GIF, and so on. But if you did export and then chose a video, you could end up with something which you could upload to, say, YouTube. You'd end up with a .mov file. So that's it. This is the end of the series. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned something if you stuck all the way through this series of videos. And hopefully you'll check out some of the other videos that I'm making. Okay, bye.